Okay, we're
Yeah.
live, and you're back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay.
So can my wife. It's all good.
It's all good. Everyone's going to be happy
Baruch Hashem.
because we're learning Torah on a Wednesday night. This is normally a Thursday night class, but we're going live Wednesday night because Thursday night we'll be listening to the Megillah, and we'll be at the end of a fast, and we'll be fulfilling the start of our 4 mitzvot on Purim. So therefore, we decided that we're going to learn one night earlier, and we're all excited for the upcoming holiday, and more excited for the limud that we're going to do tonight. And I guess we just get right into it. So we are learning the guy with the Perplexed from this book right here, and we are on page number 9, on towards the bottom of the paragraph there at the bottom.
If you don't mind, I'm just gonna say like a minute recap on what we learned last time.
Sure.
And
For
like
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
a very quick summary because I think it'll be helpful for everyone, including ourselves. So, just a few key points. The Rambam says in his introduction, as we continue to read the introduction on the first part, he says that identifying parables is one of the main, if not the main, subject or what he's going to be covering in this book. So he's very strong on identifying parables, knowing when it's a parable, and not to take things literally, which was a very common mistake and still is today. He won't explain, but then he says that he won't explain these parables in detail or at length because it's, number one, very difficult to commit to paper. It's very hard. And also to avoid its exposure to vulgar people that may mock it in some way and pick at it. So this is not only the Rambam, but the majority of our Chachamim and Tzaddikim who knew these secrets would not commit them to paper for this reason. He went to explain that Bereshit is a natural science and it cannot be taught in the presence of two men. And Maaseh Merkava, the vision of the chariot, is divine science. Basically how things work spiritually. So natural science is how it works in this world, divine science spiritually. And in this case, Maaseh Merkava, he says it can only be taught to one person and only generally in chapter headings. So this is what he intends to do when we get to this point. Although he's going to get into it, he's going to only teach it on a very general basis. So the Torah and the rabbis, well, the Torah definitely speaks in parables. The Nevi'im speak in parables in many, many cases. But he goes to say that even the rabbis teach many subjects in parables to keep them concealed, because we are not allowed to teach them to the masses. If he were to write them down, he gives the example, then I'd be teaching it to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds, which goes against what the rabbis taught us in the past. So therefore, we know. So this he sets it up. Just we're going to get into the new material. He sets it up beautifully because his whole concept of parables and everything. He says because the rabbis and the Torah had to teach us these secrets in parables. So we know for sure that many things are written in parables, and therefore we cannot take them literally. It's a perfect setup to what he's trying to prove in this book. Though I'll just end with no. He says that no one fully understands the secrets behind these parables. So although himself and others that were blessed can know them to a certain extent, nobody understands them at all. And very interestingly, he says that he explains that it's not possible to clearly explain these secrets to others. So even if the Rambam, for example, knew a subject very, very well, a secret very, very well in his mind, he says it's impossible for him to teach it clearly to another. There's almost like a natural block where he describes there are flashes, and then it gets foggy again, and then you get another flash, and it gets foggy again. Oh, it almost suggests that when a person understands something, these secrets well, it's almost a personal thing. It's between him and Hashem. That's what he's suggesting, because he's saying you won't be able to teach it to somebody else orally, properly. even if you understand it 100%. So this is where we left off last week.
Zach Baruch. Okay. So, page number 9. He writes, we had promised in the commentary of the Mishnah, that's his own commentary he's referring to, the Rambam wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, that we would explain strange subjects in the book of prophecy and the book of correspondence. The latter being a book in which we promise to explain all the difficult passages in the Midrashim, where the external sense manifestly contradicts the truth and departs from the intelligible. They are all parables. However, when many years ago we began these books and composed a part of them, our beginning to explain matters in this way did not commend itself to us. For we saw that if we should adhere to parables and to concealment of what ought to be concealed, we would not be deviating from the primary purpose. We would, as it were, have replaced one individual by another of the same species. If, on the other hand, we explained what ought to be explained, it would be unsuitable for the vulgar among the people. Now, it was to the vulgar that we wanted to explain the import of the Midrashim and the external meanings of prophecy. We also saw that if an ignoramus among the multitude of rabbinites should engage in speculation on these Midrashim, he would find nothing difficult in them, inasmuch as a rash fool, devoid of any knowledge of the nature of being, does not find impossibilities hard to accept.
So is he saying, hang on a second, am I reading this wrong? Is he suggesting that he's saying that many of the rabbis were ignorant?
No. Oh, well, maybe he is.
Top of the page. We also we also saw that if an ignoramus among the multitude of rabbinites should engage...
Are rabbinites rabbis?
I believe so.
It would seem.
Yeah.
I've never seen that word before. Rabbinites.
Ignoramus.
That if an ignoramus
among them.
Among the multitude.
So maybe some, like a very small percentage of them. Okay, got it. That makes more sense. If not, it would be a bit too aggressive.
Yeah. If, however, a perfect man of virtue should engage in speculation on them, he cannot escape one of two courses. Either he can take the speeches in question in their external sense, and in so doing, think ill of their author and regard him as an ignoramus. In this, there is nothing that would upset the foundations of belief, because he thinks the guy is crazy.
Right.
Right?
No, he's speaking about Midrashim here, remember?
Yes.
The topic is Midrashim, okay?
So he's saying there's two options. When somebody intelligent, somebody learned, looks at a Midrash, he has two ways to go. The first way is that he can think that it's
He can
silly.
take it literal and he can discount.
I think it's silly. He's going to think it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one way. What's the other way?
Or he can attribute to them an inner meaning, thereby extricating himself from his predicament and being able to think well of the author, whether or not the inner meaning of the saying is clear to him.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the meaning, so let's just recap here.
Yes.
He said that we have all of these midrashim, and there's a lot of different people in the world. Okay, he's saying that he began to write these explanations, correct? And one line here that I had difficulty understanding. We would have replaced one individual by another of the same species if we had adhered to the parables and to concealment of what ought to be concealed. We would not be deviating from the primary purpose. I'm not sure what that meant there at the bottom of page 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. His primary purpose. Okay, wait. His primary purpose is to reveal what is concealed. Okay, or to explain what is concealed. Fine, but the problem is, it's unsuitable for the vulgar.
Yeah. So what he's trying. I think what he's trying to say is that the primary purpose is specifically to reveal what's concealed. So there's something in the midrash that's not literal, that is sod, that is hidden, that is a concealed message. And the problem is that he wants to explicate it, he wants to explain it, but by doing so, he runs the risk of someone vulgar understanding this. That's his struggle.
Not even understanding it, misusing it.
Well, to misuse it, you have to understand something of it to be able to take that, what you just got, and go and make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
Or go and make something bad out of it. Because by him clarifying the midrash, he's making the vulgar person somewhat understand it at his level. Before, he understood nothing. The vulgar is like looking at this thing and he's saying, this means nothing to me.
Right.
But now Rambam has elucidated this, and the vulgar guy is saying, oh, I get this. But the problem is he's only got up 10% of it. The other 90% he didn't understand. So by the good act, that the good intention of the Rambam, he's creating more danger. That's his dilemma, the way I understand it.
The strange thing about it is that whenever I've heard midrashim explained properly, it's straightforward. The hard part is getting to the explanation. But once you get to the explanation, it's clear. It's like, even you have to be really ignorant, like really, someone maybe, that's challenged, and, it makes it so much clearer. It's much more, like you said, Jimmy, it's much more difficult when it's in parables.
Yes.
Right?
So when it's in parables, think of it like this. Think of it like there's a person who's an ignoramus, the way he calls it, an ignoramus. So someone who's mundane, someone who doesn't study Torah at all, someone who, when he sits with his friends, probably laughs at concepts of Torah. And then all of a sudden, there's this midrash that he makes no sense of it, so it's not even going to even deal with it. But the Rambam takes it and now elucidates it. He makes it more clear. So the problem now is that this vulgar person, again, I hate using the term, but that's the term the Rambam uses. He gets it, because the Rambam clarified it a bit, right? So now he gets it, but he doesn't get it properly. He gets it, and now he takes it, and it becomes dangerous. So in a sense, by removing one of the veils that's in the parable, Rambam is creating a problem situation, because he can't guarantee that it's only going to fall in the hands of someone that's learned, or someone that deserves to understand the concept. Right? Am I making sense? That you see where I'm going?
It makes sense what you're saying. The only part I'm having a little bit of hard time to understand is we all know a lot of people who don't follow yet, who will, God willing, but their biggest problem is when things don't make sense. When you read a midrash and someone teaches the midrash literally, it doesn't make sense to them, and they say, this is silliness, and that's when they really poke fun at it. Once you clarify it, if they have any level of intelligence, they start saying, I would think that makes sense. I may not agree with it or whatever, okay, but that makes more sense. Yeah,
yes, good point. And he makes even one further point, which I think is humorous. And he says, if an ignoramus among the multitude of rabbinites should engage in speculation, he would find nothing difficult in them, inasmuch as a rash fool, devoid of any knowledge of the nature of being, does not find impossibilities hard to accept. So he's saying, like, you get a fool that watches Spider-Man, right? And he's going to think Spider-Man exists. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the midrash, taken literally, he believes it. Like, you see, that's another extreme. He doesn't even need a parable to say, what does this mean? Like, he's going to take it literally and think that someone can fly. And so these are the dangers that he's trying to open our eyes to what the danger is of opening all this information to people. I think that's the whole point of this part, right? If you take a step back, what's he trying to? What's the purpose of all this? What is he telling us?
Yeah.
He's warning us of the dangers.
Okay. So the good man, or he calls it the man of virtue, can go in two different ways. Either he'll disregard it, thinking the author is an ignoramus, or he can find the inner meaning and think well of the author. That's what he said last. With regard to the meaning of prophecy, the exposition of its various degrees, and the elucidation of the parables occurring in the prophetic books, another manner of explanation is used in this treatise. In view of these considerations, we have given up composing these two books in the way in which they were begun. We have confined ourselves to mentioning briefly the foundations of belief and general truths, while dropping hints that approach a clear exposition, just as we have set forth in the great legal compilation Mishneh Torah. Because I was wondering.
So in a nutshell, what's he saying? What's he saying in a nutshell?
I was wondering when he started that paragraph, the Book of Prophecy and Book of Correspondence. I remember. I never heard of those books.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Wow.
what, am I missing something in the Rambam's library? But clearly, he may have started and then realized he stopped.
Wow. Which, by the way, these books of prophets and God have to be completely different than the Mishneh Torah. Right? The Mishneh Torah is absolutely rational.
In the beginning of the Mishneh Torah, he talks about prophecy, right? In the first few chapters. I think that's what he's referring to over here. There's a whole discussion over there about prophets, and he does even speak a little bit about the parables.
Okay.
My speech in the present treatise is directed, as I have mentioned, to one who has philosophized, or become a philosopher, and has knowledge of the true sciences, but believes at the same time in the matters pertaining to the law, and is perplexed as to their meaning because of the uncertain terms and the parables.
So again, but I think the law is Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
he's saying that this whole thing is directed at people that are not they're scientifically advanced, which means they believe in rational law, they believe in rational science law, 2 + 2 = 4, and at the same time they have to make that combine with what they're reading in these parables, which
to them doesn't make sense.
Exactly, which are not necessarily rational.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We shall include in this treatise some chapters in which there will be no mention of an equivocal term. Such a chapter will be preparatory for another, or it will hint at one of the meanings of an equivocal term that I might not wish to mention explicitly in that place, or it will explain one of the parables, or hint at the fact that a certain story is a parable. Okay.
So I think he's referring to, which is this chapter that we're on, when he's going to switch out a word, that's going to be one of his methods to uncover the secret or the meaning of a parable. They're just switching the word up.
Such a chapter may contain strange matters regarding which the contrary of the truth sometimes is believed, either because of the equivocality of the terms or because a parable is taken for the thing being represented, or vice versa. Go on. As I have mentioned parables, we shall make the following introductory remarks. Know that the key to the understanding of all the prophets, peace be upon them, have said, and to the knowledge of its truth, is an understanding of the parables, of their import, and of the meaning of the words occurring in them. You know what God has said, and by the ministry of the prophets have I used similitudes. And you know that he has said, put forth a riddle and speak a parable. Yechezkel. You know too that because of the frequent use prophets make of parables, the prophet has said, they say of me, is he not a maker of parables? You know how Solomon began his book, to understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. And it said in the Midrash, to what were the words of the Torah to be compared before the advent of Solomon? To a well of waters, of which are a great depth and cool, yet no man could drink of them. Now what did one clever man do? He joined cord with cord and rope with rope and drew them up and drank. Thus did Solomon say one parable after another and speak one word after another until he understood the meaning of the words of the Torah. That is literally what they say. I do not think that anyone possessing an unimpaired capacity imagines that the words of Torah referred to here, that one contrives to understand through understanding the meaning of parables, are ordinances concerning the building of tabernacles, the lulav, and the law of the 4 shomrim, trustees.
Hang on. I don't know. That was a very long sentence, and I didn't fully understand.
What's the meaning of contrives?
Attempts to
Anyone possessing
to strive to attempt to have the intention to. So to hear that one has the intention to understand through understanding.
So he doesn't think that anyone possessing an unimpaired capacity, that is a normal person, he doesn't think that anyone possessing normal capacity imagines the words.
unimpaired, I think it means someone advanced. That he's not. He's
someone who's advanced. Someone who's advanced.
Yeah.
Right.
Unimpaired capacity imagines that the words of the Torah referred to here, that one contrives to understand through understanding the meaning of parables or ordinances concerning. See, I don't understand what he's trying to say.
No, the sentence seems to be not properly formed. Like the sentence is not only run on, it's not grammatically correct. Unless we maybe have to read it different. Let's see if maybe the pauses.
Maybe we just need to really break it down to understand.
Yeah, correct. I do not think that anyone possessing an unimpaired capacity imagines that the words of the Torah referred to here, that one contrives to understand through understanding the meaning of parables, are ordinances concerning the building of tabernacles, the lulav, and the law of 4 trustees.
I think okay. I get it.
So I think I want to hear from you first, obviously, Rabbi, but I think I know where he's going with this.
I think he's saying that there is much more deeper meaning to the building of the Mishkan, the shaking of the lulav, and the 4 shomrim. That any wise person, is and again with unimpaired capacity or an advanced person is not looking at these words of Torah that was quoted in this midrash, right? The midrash said above, like this, 8 lines down, to what were the words of the Torah be compared to before the advent of Solomon? Solomon needed to use parables to build that rope to pull them up so that he can understand. And he used his proverbs, he used Mishle and all these thousands of Meshalim and parables to figure that out. So if Shlomo HaMelech did that, Kal Vachomer, right? We can't just take it for face value. We can't just look at a shaking of lulav or taking a myrtle branch with a beautiful fruit and arvei nachal and all these things. You know what I mean? The 4 species and the 4 shomrim, and think that there's just something very literal. I think that's.
I'm trying to figure out what does the word ordinance mean? Okay, piece of legislation enacted. Okay.
Yeah, ordinances is like a laws, the laws of.
So I'm seeing it a little bit differently. Hold on, where are we? I lost my spot. I just kept reading it over and over here.
So
Well,
I also saw it a little bit differently, but go ahead, Warren.
no, go ahead. I'm trying to find my spot. Go ahead.
So I saw it a little bit differently. Maybe I'm completely off, but he's trying to make a distinction between a mashal, so a midrash, and something very straightforward and rational, like the building of the Mishkan and the law of Lulav and the law of Shomer Chinam, Shomer Sachar, right? The law of 4 trustees. Those are very straightforward laws. Those you take notes, and they're halacha. You cannot compare that and say that that's the same way that you have to learn a mashal, which is obscure. Because if you continue the next sentence, rather, what this text has in view here, without any doubt, the understanding of obscure matters. So either he's saying that the lulav and the laws of Shomer Chinam are masking obscure matters. I didn't see it that way. I'm seeing he's comparing these laws of lulav and Shomer Chinam, which are straightforward, to the parts in the Torah that are parables, and you can't learn them the same way. Shomer Chinam, you learn law, but when you're reading something about Bilam with a donkey that talks, that's not the same way. There's something obscure that's being taught there. That's how I read this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I see it a little bit. I'm reading it a little bit differently. I'm reading it now that I read it about 20 times. It's saying that it's somebody that's intelligent, that's unimpaired, that strives to understand the meaning behind the parables. Don't think that the meaning behind whatever he comes up with, the meaning behind the parables, are laws like lulav. They're not. You can't take what you think is
similar. Yeah, I like it.
Right? And then say, well, because I understand this, now we can make a law on the lulav according to it.
Yes. Right? That's it. I think he's drawing a distinction between when you're reading the Torah, you're going to read stories that don't seem real, and then you're going to read laws. The laws are to be studied as laws, but these other stories shouldn't be sat and studied like laws. They should be studied by way of understanding. There's something way beyond what you're reading that needs to be learned from this. Something obscure. I think it's a distinction.
Exactly. You can't make a law out of an understanding of a parable, because
correct.
There's you can never be sure that you're understanding a parable properly, especially when it comes to Nevi'im, right? But even the easier parables in the Midrashim are much easier than Nevi'im. There are different opinions of what,
Yes.
Different meanings. So how do you know which one it is? And we cannot draw any type of halachic decision or direction from it. That's perhaps what he's saying. Yeah. That's what it is. And
bottom line, guys, you have to take a step back. What he's trying to do is make it clear to everyone that this is not for everybody, and that there's a lot of things that he's going to say that are encoded for. He's trying to set it up. He's setting up where he's going, right? Because it's always important when we read all these things, we get caught up in the forest, right? We got to take a step back. And why is he saying? Where is he going with all this? Because up until now, he hasn't given us any real philosophical concept. He's just sort of setting up why he's writing this and the reason and the way he's writing it. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, we can go further, no?
Mm-hmm.
Rather, what this text has in view here is without any doubt the understanding of obscure matters. About this it has been said, our rabbis say, a man who loses a selah or a pearl in his house can find the pearl by lighting a taper worth an isar.
A taper worth an isar. So sell as a coin, and isar is the value. is a monetary value.
In the same way, this parable in itself is worth nothing,
Correct.
but by means of it, you can understand the words of the Torah.
Wow. So let's try to figure out what he's saying with that phrase. Wow. A pearl in his house can find someone loses a sella or a pearl in his house. A man loses a sella or a pearl in his house.
Yeah.
Can
So the
find pearl.
nimshal is you don't understand you don't understand what's in front of you, or you lost it, or you know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Text is in front of you, but it's lost to you. It's in your house, but you can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to find it is by lighting a taper worth an isar, which is another coin.
Yeah. So in other words, you can see something but not perceive it.
Yes, but you need the taper is worth a lot less than the silver.
Amazing.
Coin,
Yes.
right? So what he could be saying here is, yeah, I get maybe you need to start somewhere. You need to light. You gotta in order to dig deep, in order to understand deep, to find what's out there.
Start with small details.
Start with small details.
Yeah, because there's no question that the pearl is more valuable than the star, and you're using the star to find the pearl, right?
Yeah.
So that's right on.
This too is literally what they say. Now consider the explicit affirmation of the sages, may their memory be blessed, that the internal meaning of the words of the Torah is a pearl, whereas the external meaning of of all parables is worth nothing. And their comparison of the concealment of a subject by its parable's external meaning to a man who let drop a pearl in his house, which was dark and full of furniture.
Right, but the pearl, the isar, that's the mashal or the parable or the midrash, that's worth nothing, is the only way, by studying it, is the only way that you're going to get to the pearl, which is valuable.
Yes.
So you have to start by learning the midrash, which means nothing, and then you get into the tunnel so you can find the valuable pearl. I think that's the mashal. Got to start somewhere.
Where he continues. Now this pearl is there, but he does not see it and does not know where it is. It's as though it was no longer in his possession, and it is impossible for him to derive any benefit from it until, as has been mentioned, he lights a lamp, an act to which an understanding of the meaning of the parable corresponds. The sage has said, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Here now, so maskiot of silver. Here now an elucidation of the thought that he has set forth. This is Shlomo Melech. The term maskiot denotes filigree traceries.
I don't know what that is, guys.
No idea.
What's a tracery?
It's a filigree.
Should we Google that one right now?
We got Googled out. We have Google. That's
filigree tracery. Tracery is architectural.
filigree is a delicate ornamental technique that is used.
It's a type of design.
Yeah.
Filigree is a type of design.
It's a technique. It's a technique.
It's a technique to block something out.
And it intertwines fine gold or silver.
Yes. So the term maskil denotes filigree traceries. I mean to say traceries in which there are apertures with very small eyelets, like the handiwork of silversmiths.
Hang on, if you look at the property maybe of what silver and gold is, right? Maybe we can gain some understanding. So again, the mashal is a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and settings of silver.
The word he's trying to explain is maskiot.
maskiot, in settings of silver. So the setting, so silver as an element is much stronger than gold, right? When something's set in silver, it's
stronger, but not as valuable.
not as valuable, but it's a good anchor. It's
Yes.
you need
Yes.
it. You almost need it, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think he's trying to legitimize the use of midrashim and mashalim to get a stronger point across. Right?
Art School translates it as like golden apples carved on silver plates.
Golden apples carved on silver plates. It's almost like so someone that said a good word said by somebody. It's the gold is the beauty, and the silver that holds it, whatever's holding it, is the stability to it.
Is the stability.
It holds like the word, it lasts.
Okay, so just I'm reading from this book here. It's an Art School book here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So look what the Ralbag in the notes here at the bottom. By the way, it's like one line. Look at all the notes.
Wow.
On this pasuk explains that the Ralbag, just as the golden apples are perceived only when one peers through the silver lattice work, a person gains optimal benefit from words of wisdom when he studies them carefully. That's the Ralbag. Okay. Anyways, but so the term maskiot denotes filigree traceries. I mean to say traceries in which there are apertures with very small, page 12, eyelets like the handiwork of silversmith. They are so called because a glance penetrates through them. For in the Aramaic translation of the Bible, the Hebrew term vayashkef. Okay, the Q is a kuf. The vayashkef, meaning he glanced, is translated vayishtech in probably Aramaic, right? Vayishtech, which is maskiot. Maskiot, yes. The sage accordingly said that a saying uttered with a view to two meanings is like an apple of gold overlaid with silver filigree work having very small holes. Now see how marvelously this dictum describes a well-constructed parable. For he says that in a saying that has two meanings, he means an external and an internal one. The external meaning ought to be as beautiful as silver, while its internal meaning ought to be more beautiful than the external one, the former being in comparison to the latter as gold is to silver. Its external meaning also ought to contain in it something that indicates to someone considering it what is to be found in its internal meaning. Let me read that again. Its external meaning also ought to contain in it something that indicates to someone considering it what is to be found in its internal meaning. Okay, so it's got to lead him to something, as happens in the case of an apple of gold overlaid with silver filigree work having very small holes. When looked at from a distance or with imperfect attention, it is deemed to be an apple of silver. But when a keen-sighted observer looks at it with full attention, its interior becomes clear to him as he knows that it is of gold.
Wow.
So we can so here's a perfect example of him describing this parable, which is not easy to describe. But even so, you can see how much subjectivity there is here, right? Subjective. One person can explain it one way. The Ralbag explained it another way. The Rambam is explaining. So this goes back to what he said before. This is why you cannot compare it to law or derive any law from it. We're trying to explain what its meaning is, but it's not for that purpose. And here's an example. How can you take this explanation and say, oh, now we're going to make this law out of it? You can't. Not possible.
You can't make it to law, but I still believe I've seen enough and I've read enough in my life to know that even in basic law, there's much more beyond the letters of what we see and read. In the Torah law, I'm referring to Torah law. So I know the Rambam is very literal to that, and it's not, he's maybe not a big Hasidic thinker, but when you read the books of Hasidut, right, you see that, right? Now that's arguably, I don't know, it's maybe it's I'm gonna say it's a deeper level. It's not the same thing as a parable, but I do believe, like, listen, any rabbi that gets up on Sukkot to talk about the lulav, he's going to be talking about some other significance of a lulav that's, a metaphorical idea, or a remez or an allusion to why we're shaking the lulav. Because we don't understand why we have the dimensions of the Mishkan, and that's why I was thinking the way I was thinking before when we said that line, But when you read the Orach Chaim and the Kli Yakar, and he's telling you why the
something deeper
had to be half measurements and why right, and the other one didn't have to be half measurements, it's something deeper. So
there's a distinction between the two things. There's one understanding the real meaning of halacha, why we do something in a certain way. There can be, and there's for sure different opinions sometimes, and there's a lot of depth sometimes. But this is different. It's saying you're taking something that's obscure from the onset, obscure like a parable that we really have to figure out.
Yeah.
Don't use it for halacha. Don't use it for halacha.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Because so he makes it very clear. So even though he's very strong on don't take parables literally, we're going to delve into them. You should see, an unimpaired person should look at it deeper to gain the understanding, but don't apply it to halacha, to halachic matters.
Okay, let's just finish the paragraph, I guess. The parables of the prophets, peace be upon them, are similar. Their external meaning contains wisdom that is useful in many respects, among which is the welfare of human societies, as is shown by the external meaning of proverbs and of similar sayings. Their internal meaning, on the other hand, contains wisdom that is useful for beliefs concerned with the truth as it is. Okay. So he finally got a little bit practical here, the Rambam, just to, I guess, summarize. He had intent to kind of explain all this, and he realized that there's probably very few people that can really benefit from it. And even the man of virtue can be led into two different places. Either he'll think of it as that the author being crazy or an ignoramus, or he might actually gain from it. And that's why he didn't write those two books, but rather just spoke about it briefly in Mishneh Torah. And he said that this book is about people that already have the knowledge of philosophy and true sciences, and but at the same time believe in the Torah and the laws of the Torah. And then he started getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit of what a parable or a riddle and prophecy is. I think he's going to speak more about prophecy the next time we get together. But for parables, just simply from the opening statement and of the Midrash for Shlomo HaMelech's words, how the words of Torah are so deep that it's like a well of water, which are so deep and cool you can't drink of them, and you need to kind of pull them up slowly, just like Shlomo HaMelech did. Yeah. And then this last piece over here, which I thought was brilliant, with the golden apples in the maskiot of silver. From far, on the external, you see the silver apple, but when you really, really delve deep, you'll notice that it's made out of, it's really gold.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think we'll stop here. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chazak u'baruch.
Chazak u'baruch.
Okay, everyone. Have a great night.
Purim Sameach.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Purim Sameach.
Purim Sameach.